What's happening, folks? Welcome back to the channel. Another international break is finally over and Celtic are nearly back with us. Coming up tonight, we're going to look ahead to Celtic's next block of fixtures. We'll also discuss the appointment of Paul Tisdale as Celtic's head of football operations with Martin and Darren. And we've got something special lined up for you thanks to FanTeam, Europe's biggest fantasy sports company. FanTeam have an exclusive offer just for Celtic Fans TV viewers. They're running a single fantasy contest for Saturday's game against Aberdeen. It's very easy to get involved. You can get a free entry by clicking the link in the description. Just pick 5 players for your team. I'll be sharing my own team later on in the video, and I'll be explaining how you can get a free entry every time Celtic score a goal this weekend. So let's get into it then. Martin, we'll start with you, mate. It's been a wee while since you've been with us. We obviously finished up before that last international break with a late win away at Ross County. That followed the disaster in Dortmund. So how do you think we're set coming into this next run of fixtures?
It always feels like an eternity when you have an international break since you've last played, and after that game and result in Dortmund, it almost felt you either want to get right back in it to recover from it and get over the result and try and get a run of good performances and good results again, or you want a break and hide under the covers for a couple of days because it was such a sore one. But domestically we've been really good, and the goal in Ross County that we conceded, it was a penalty, wasn't it? And it was the first league goal we'd lost. So I think the important thing in games like Ross County is sometimes just to get the result. They can be so difficult in those type pitches and freezing cold up in Dingwall. It felt really special just to get the winner late on, because I think we're about half an hour, we're one down, despite having all the possession and not having a lot of clear cut chances. Far from it, and a lot of our first 11 players didn't perform well on the day, but. You just need to grind these results out, and that's probably the first one this season we've had to grind out a result. Every other we've been playing really well, good standard, and in a lot of the games scoring early on as well, and real comfortable victories. So for our first goal we conceded in the league campaign, and I think that's seven games. But to get the victory and be 21 points out of a possible 21 points after 7 games is a really solid start. So domestically, feeling really good, albeit Aberdeen this weekend will be the biggest test we've had so far. Some will smell when you say that, but I think based on form, it absolutely is the biggest test. Although we've played some on paper, we've played some of the better teams. But in Europe, a completely different feeling after a brilliant start in the campaign in the Champions League. The bubble really burst in Dortmund, so mixed emotions domestically versus how we're feeling about the Champions League campaign. But I think just overarching feeling is keen to get stuck back in, and the squad is really stepped up so far this season. And if you're taking quote, has it been a great start to the season? Undoubtedly it has. Other than that shocking result in Dortmund.
Yeah, absolutely. This is live, by the way. So if you're watching with us, please like the video. Try and get as many people on as possible while we're here. Darren, I think that's something we're going to have to expect and manage, isn't it, this season? A game like Dortmund takes so much out of the players, took so much out of us, never mind the players. And coming back to domestic football, you're going to need to rotate your squad. You're going to need your players who maybe didn't play in games like that to come in and help you. And I think Luke McKibben's against Ross County coming in off the bench is probably a prime example of that.
It's probably why you have big squads, and we talk about depth a lot, and maybe it's a bit strange us talking about depth because we have the best starting 11, but sometimes you can't overlook things like depth. Even just playing against Dortmund, the physical aspect it takes out on you, but the scoreline as well, it takes a mental aspect out of it as well. It really decks your confidence. And then, as you've seen, as you mentioned there, when McGowan came on, he changed the game because he's probably fresh physically and mentally as well. He's probably just dying to get on the pitch, whereas the guys that were playing on Wednesday, they're probably tired and they've maybe got one eye on the international break. And this, like from August or from maybe September to January, is that time period where you will be playing the most football. You've got the League Cup, you have Champions League, and then domestic as well. So I think you're going to have that starting 11 who are going to play. Like, you could have rotated a lot of players against Ross County because they're maybe not the best team in the league, but you take a chance. Like, look at the game at Falkirk, for example, where we rotated heavily, and for 60 minutes we were looking really bad and could have, not say lost the game, well, looking if we were struggling a bit, then we turned to the bench and you saw the impact that those subs made. So we do talk about depth a lot, and it is very important, and it might not be glamorous to talk about, and you might say, oh, that's Celtic, they're the best team in the league, their starting 11 should be able to beat MD, but it's not as easy as that when you're playing 3 times a week. You need to get some fresh legs, you need players mentally to give a rest, and I think that's maybe good for international break as well. Like Sir Callum McGregor, who has retired for international breaks, we've seen him flourish since he's done that. He would have been, if he was playing, he would have played both those games against Scotland and Croatia, and he would have probably felt tired going into this game against Aberdeen, but now he's had a couple of weeks off. I'm sure he'll be ready to get going as well.
He's looked all the better for retiring from international football. Let's have a look at those next 7 fixtures for Celtic then in this next block before the November international break. These international breaks are so disruptive at this time of the season. Martin, we'll come to Aberdeen in a minute. Then we've got Atalanta away in Italy. Motherwell, then Dundee at home, then the League Cup where we face Aberdeen again, then Leipzig, and then we finish off this section of fixtures away to Kilmarnock. So there is tough games in there. Again, there's 2 away fixtures in the league after European games. And again, it's where you expect, we can't always maybe expect the team to play scintillating football like the way we started the season. And it can be so difficult psychologically for the players to trying to make that step up to the Champions League and then coming back to domestic football at the weekend, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a cracking run of games there. And I think the only one that you'd pick out that you'd say should be a little bit more comfortable than the others would be Dundee at home, but absolutely no guarantees on a midweek in the month of October. I'm not sure if that one might be into the month of November, but that cold time of the season. But a cracking run of games in there. A cup semi-final, couple of Champions League games. We will be the underdogs. Atalanta away and Leipzig at home. We'll be the underdogs in both those games, and two cracking games against Aberdeen, who we said already are in good form this year. So I'm really looking forward to that. I suppose that the Motherwell and Kilmarnock are 2 of those fixtures that you never tend to have it, or very rarely tend to have it easy. We have had the odd comfortable victory at those stadiums in recent years, but generally speaking, you tend to get a right good game, and often going into the latter stages of those games, there's nothing in it, and you're chasing a winning goal. So those are cracking away games as well. But these are the games we look forward to. If you put up a group of games there that all look like they'd be comfortable victories, there maybe wouldn't be the same enthusiasm and excitement about these games, but I just hope we come out of them with, still in the cup, because to win that cup semi would be great. To get a final, wouldn't it, this early in the season? To be in the final with that first trophy is important, and for the Champions League campaign it would be great if we could get something from those 2 games. I think we knew after that first game there was going to be a run of 3 really tough games. But it'd be brilliant, especially in the home game, I suppose, if we go and take something from that, and who knows, maybe come away with a victory. We've always got a chance at home. And then, of course, in the league campaign, we just want to keep that momentum going and not become complacent, try and build on the lead that we've got, particularly over Rangers, but try and get a bit of gap between ourselves and Aberdeen. So I'm really looking forward to that run of games, Paul.
Lots to look forward to, and it starts obviously on Saturday against Aberdeen at Celtic Park. It's the 2 informed teams, and another team in great form, our FanTeam. And as I touched on at the top of the video, they've got a special offer just for Celtic Fans TV viewers. If you sign up via the link in the description, it's also pinned to the top of the live chat. By midday on Saturday, you'll get a free entry to the Celtic versus Aberdeen single match fantasy contest, where £1,000 is up for grabs. And that's not all. You'll also get a free entry to future Celtic contests every time Celtic score a goal. That includes for the midweek Champions League clash against Atalanta coming up. There's no deposit required to claim this offer. If you do decide to deposit, they'll also give you an extra £10 in free fantasy entries. So it's not like your usual fantasy football, where you need to play a whole season and remember to do transfers. It's a one-off contest where the prize pool is £1,000. All you have to do is pick a team of 5 players from the game at the weekend. We'll have a look at my team in a minute. It works the same as fantasy football in terms of points are given for goals, assists, clean sheets, for goalkeepers and defenders. The link to the terms and conditions and to how the scoring works is also in the description below. Remember, this is a gambling offer, so it's 18 plus only, and the terms apply. Make sure you click the link in the description to sign up and claim your free entry to Saturday's contest. It's a great way to support the channel as well, so get involved. Let's have a look then at the 5 players that I went with. I've gone with Liam Scales, Alistair Johnston, Callum McGregor, Bio Hatate, and of course Kyogo, who is my captain. I think captains score 1.5 points. So there's a budget. You can't get all of the big hitters in there. You need to balance it. You need to have a balance between attackers and defenders. And if you like, you can have some Aberdeen players in there as well. I know that goalkeepers get points for every shot they save. So if you think Mitov's going to have a busy afternoon in Aberdeen goal, he might be a good shout to put in. But that's the 5 I went with. You'll be up against the rest of the boys as well. They'll have submitted their teams by Saturday, so you can compete against us there as well. Right, Darren, Aberdeen, they've won all their games so far. They're under new management with Jimmy Tilleen. It's actually refreshing to see a team in Scotland go out with the usual managerial appointments and do something that seems a bit more adventurous. And obviously he's off to a brilliant start. I think you can tell Aberdeen as a club are galvanised. They're right behind them. I've seen some of their games this season. The atmosphere at Pittodrie looks really good. That's a good thing for the league, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they approach this game on Saturday.
Aye, I think the only game I've watched for Aberdeen this season was a game against Ross County. I think Kevin Nisbet scored in the last minute. He's been a really good signing for them. Brilliant at Hibs, left them, and then he's done a good deal going back to Aberdeen. But you could arguably say this is probably the hardest game that we've had to play domestically this season. We're just going off the table because both teams are sitting 7 wins at 21 points. Yeah. Some people say that Aberdeen tend to lie down to us. I disagree with that, obviously, but I think obviously being at home is going to be a big advantage for us. Can't remember that. When was the last time we were actually at Celtic Park? It's been a while, and I think Falkirk was the last game at Celtic Park. Yeah. So I'm actually dying to get back Saturday 3 o'clock kick off, so we can have a few beers as well. And I think we're doing a post-match pint as well. So I'm looking forward to that. It's obviously going to be a tough game because Aberdeen are in form and they're going to bring that confidence, but maybe them bringing that confidence might be a good thing for us because teams tend to come to Celtic Park and sit in and try and make it a scruffy game and take a 0-0. If Aberdeen have that maybe false sense of confidence that we had, for example, go to Dortmund, it can maybe make the game more open, which I'm sure would benefit us. So yeah, interesting to see. I don't know too much about that manager. Is it Dutch? Is it Swedish. Dutch or Danish? Swedish. Very rarely you see a Swedish manager come into Scotland, but he's made a very good start. So it's going to be a hard game, but I think we'll win.
You make a good point there actually about the comparison to us going to Dortmund. I think we did. Even the team believed that we could go and have a go, and obviously we got brought back down to earth with a bang. Martin Darren's mentioned the 3 o'clock kickoff there on Saturday afternoon. There was a question mark around that and the game not being on TV, given that it's a top of the table clash and sort of high profile game for Scottish football. But Celtic rejected the opportunity of a TV slot being given to this game because it would obviously have led to a change in the kickoff time. I just want to cover this quickly. I think the club are absolutely right to do that, weren't they?
I think that they are very aware of, the lion's share of fans will come from Glasgow, as you would expect, but there's a lot of fans who travel afar from various parts of UK. There's obviously a lot of Irish fans come over as well, and whenever that kick-off time's changed, it makes it extremely difficult for those fans to get back and forward. They leave the house at a really, really early hour and don't get home till late, and that's for the 3 o'clock kick-off. So viability is definitely questionable when kick-off times are changed. So I think it's good of the club not to be tempted by what I would assume would be additional revenue with the TV rights, and think first and foremost about the fans. And generally speaking, our home games do tend to be, your Saturdays at 3:00, and unless we find ourselves in the Europa League and we're playing Thursday nights, there's always that impact. But it does tend to be our away games are televised and our home games tend to be at home, and it's great just to see Celtic Park full, because that's what you want. And there's certainly been a huge demand for the home games. Tickets have been difficult to get for those, and they always are for the away games, but equally for the home games. So it'll be good to see, as Darren says, 3:00 on a Saturday, stadium absolutely bouncing, and it will be interesting to see what Aberdeen's tactics are. I've genuinely not got a clue, whether they'll come and try and sit in it. You look at their score lines, 7 wins out of 7 is a sensational start for any team out with Celtic and Rangers, but a lot of their score lines have been really close. They've been winning by the odd goal and getting a late goal as well, which tells you, they're quite a fit team, and they're fighting right to the death. But I think their last 4 games in the league have all been by a single goal, 1-0, 2-1, 2-1, 3-2. So, but nevertheless, very, very impressive. But they're not going out and hammering teams. I think they've 15-4-6 against versus we've got 22 goals for and 1 against. So clearly a difference in the number of goals that the two teams are scoring, and the number of goals that are being conceded as well. But no, I'm sure it'll be a cracking game, and I think that first goal will be really important. If we can get off to a good start as we have done in many league games this year, then hopefully that will set the tone and it'll be a comfortable victory. But certainly from my perspective, being involved in a supporters bus and stuff, the demand for tickets has been incredible for this one. So I think everybody licking their lips, missing being at Celtic Park, as Darren says, after an international break and playing against the team that are on the same number of points. So a real tasty tie to look forward to.
Aye, it's going to be brilliant. There has been this assertion, actually, Darren, a lot of people have commented that Aberdeen have not been tested yet, that and Martin alludes to the number of games they've won by a single goal there, that they've not really played that well at times, but they've always ground out victories. And I think that's unusual for a team, again, out with Celtic or Rangers, to go through a run, 7 straight wins in the league, while not necessarily playing very well. That is pretty rare, but surely Aberdeen will look at this as a bit of a free hit for them, because they're going to be the underdogs coming to Celtic Park. They've been in great form. It is a bit of a free hit, so will that maybe inform how they come at the game tactically?
Well, they can only play what's in front of them, to be honest, and they've not played Celtic or Rangers yet. So it's not as if they're saying, "Oh, we've got this 7 wins in a row," but it doesn't mean nothing because we've not played Celtic or Rangers. They've beaten Hearts, who I know doesn't really mean much because they're bottom of the league. And coming to Celtic Park, I know you said it can maybe seem as a free hit, but I also think that the run that they're on can be a bit of distraction to them, because when they're going in, I know they're saying this is their biggest challenge, but they've still got that in the back of their mind. We're undefeated this season. We need to keep that up. It's the same with us, but maybe we're on a different scale because it's more expected of us. Because it's a bit of a surprise to them, they're saying, right, this is the best start we've had to a season probably, I don't know, since the 80s when Aberdeen were winning European Championships. But there must be a bit of pressure on them now, because I think last season they were 4th, 5th maybe. They are that team that years ago they were always guaranteed to get 3rd, and now they seem to be the 3rd best team in Scotland at the moment. But I think there still can be a bit of distraction on them, and they will. I don't think they'll come in with any fear. It's like I said in the last comment there. I think they'll have a bit too much confidence, which will benefit us. So yeah, I mean they've got nothing. They don't have anything to lose, to be honest, because if they do, Celtic will be odds-on favourites, and if we win, they'll come away saying, "Look, we did the best we can. We're still 7 out of 8," and the managers and the players will say, "Oh, we'll just build for there. We're still second, and we're playing for this and that." But we know our game. We want to make it 8 from 8. They want to make it 8 from 8. So if both teams come at it, I'm pretty sure it'll be a pretty intense game.
Aye, let's hope so. It's really interesting to see how it's going to play out. Certainly for the Aberdeen tactical approach, but just facing a new team that's in such good form, there's a lot to look forward to in it. Martin, in terms of team news for us, we won't hear about the guys who have been out injured. I was thinking till tomorrow when Brendan Rodgers speaks at the press conference, but Cameron Carter-Vickers has been missing. Austin Trusty's come in. Just want to get your initial thoughts on Trusty in those first few games.
I think at times not being impressed, but at other times being impressed. It's one of those, and I try not to judge too long, because there is a long list of Celtic players who've maybe not started terribly well, and then just as time's gone on, they've become better players. And a prime example of that right now would be Kuhn. I think a lot of us had kind of given up on Kuhn, even though it was at the early stages of his career and just sort of he's miles away. And of course there was things going on in the background with him, wasn't there, that not necessarily everybody was aware of. But I think far too early to judge one way or another. One of the interesting things is who he's been playing alongside. So if you're to put Carter Vickers and Trusty in the same team, for example, versus Carter Vickers being missing, it does make a big difference, doesn't it? So, and then of course there's a bit around well who's the opposition and how those games panned out. Has it been one of the easier fixtures, or has it been a tougher fixture? So probably on the fence at the moment, been more impressed than unimpressed, but interesting just to see what happens in the weeks ahead. I think just final thing on the Aberdeen is, it happens all the time in Scottish football, is you play a team in the league and then you play them in the cup within a couple of weeks as well. It just always seems to happen, doesn't it? So we've got domestically Aberdeen, Motherwell, Dundee, and then Aberdeen back again. It's a frustration that happens all the time in Scottish football. Probably because we play teams too often. You play them 4 times in the league, and then you play the better teams in the cups as well. So not ideal. But we'll miss Carter Vickers. I don't know if he's expected back this weekend, Paul. Is there rumours he might be back, or?
I think the manager said before the break there was a good chance he would be back. I guess we'll just need to wait and see. Darren, just in terms of Lewis Palma, we obviously played that friendly against Sligo Rovers during this break. He did score a hat-trick. We left it a bit late to win that game. Where do you see his position just now in terms of getting minutes in the team? Because you go back to last season, actually at this time last season, there was a lot of onus on him in a wide position. He was scoring goals. He just arrived at the club. He looked like possibly the only positive summer signing we made last season, but he's struggling to get in the team just now. He had a really, really disappointing outing against Falkirk. But I mean, where do you see him in the pecking order just now? And do you think there's any chance of him getting in? I think the thing for me is the way we're playing without the ball. I just don't see that for Palma, that intensity.
No, I don't see him getting a lot of game time. I do see him getting some game time, don't get me wrong. I think he will make the odd appearance off the bench, but I think his performances, like you said, against Falkirk, we done the full-time reaction to that, and I think he was one of the players that we picked out who was very, very below par. And I know a lot of the team for most of that game weren't very good, but he was particularly a standout. And then just going back to last season, I think the winger situation was obviously a lot different last season. I think the recruitment going into last season, which we don't want to talk about because we'd done a hell of a lot last season, in the wide area was really lacklustre. And you had the likes of Yang there who didn't get much game time. Palma would also play ahead of him. Now this season it seems to be that Palma's playing that bad that usually 70-80 minutes when Maeda or Kuhn is getting taken off, if it's not Forrest coming on, likely it's going to be Yang coming on, and that kind of says everything about where Palma is at the moment. And unfortunately, I think that's just his performances are reflecting that. I just don't think he's doing a good enough job, particularly just the style that Celtic play. It's not too different from the way it was with Ange. Like, it's very high press, attacking. I know Palma didn't actually play under Ange. He's only played under Brendan, but the style and the intensity is still there. And sometimes I think that intensity doesn't suit Palma. He likes to get the ball, slow the pace down, and try and get one-on-one with a fullback. And often at times he's very predictable, tries to cut in, or he either tries some fancy little skill move to get his highlight on Instagram. And, we don't know Brendan Rodgers' thoughts on it because he's not going to be honest in the media and say, look, that's not the type of player I want. But just by seeing the fact that he's not taking him off the bench 75, 80 minutes in a game where the result's already in the bag, particularly games where we're 1-3 up, for example, after 75 minutes, Yang's getting an nod over him.
Yeah.
So, and that's not me saying that Yang is a good player. I still think Yang is an average Celtic player. Obviously, he's not a starting Celtic player. He's the type of guy that you want to bring on that 75 minutes just when the game's over to give your like some Maeda or your Kuhn a rest. But unfortunately, I just don't see him getting that game time this season because it doesn't merit. Do I think there's a player in there? Yes, he's got those little moments, particularly ones we saw in the Champions League. That goal he scored against Atletico Madrid was a brilliant goal. The goal that got chopped off against Lazio was a brilliant goal. I remember me and you were at Ross County last season and he scored an absolute screamer. I think the game was 0-0 at the time, so he scored an absolute screamer to get that game going. So he has got those moments in him, but he needs to be more consistent. And I don't know if you probably start that by training. The manager sees it in training, and then he'll go, right, you're getting your chance. And then when you get your chance, you need to make it. Unfortunately, you're not going to get many minutes, but he has to do something, an assist, a goal to have the fans walking away after the game. So I thought Palma had a good 15 minutes when he came on there, but unfortunately, he's not doing that at the moment.
No, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Lewis Palma maybe in January. Could there be a move or even a loan move for him in January? I guess we need to wait and see. But on the topic of recruitment, Martin, we have a new head of football operations in Paul Tisdale. Some talk that he's been advising the club for a period of a few months now, even in the summer transfer window there. But I just want to read out his role because it's a very wide-ranging one. It's to oversee the development and management of effective operations to support high-level football performance, including the identification and development of talent in line with the club's objective to develop Champions League players through the academy and the recruitment processes. So, Martin, I guess the question is, can he be successful? That's a very wide remit. It's not just about recruitment. I listened to a podcast with him the other day. He's had quite an interesting journey. He retired from playing when he was 26. He managed Exeter for 12 years. And since then, a couple of other managerial jobs before COVID, but since then he's become this sort of consultant who uses data in quite a unique way. He's advised the global football holdings clubs, one of which is Augsburg, by the way, if you think back to our transfer dealings in terms of bringing Arne Engels in during the summer from Augsburg. He's worked with Fulham and Crystal Palace to identify new managers using data. So he's an interesting character. Ultimately, do you think he'll be judged on recruitment? And we've obviously had challenges with heads of recruitment in recent years, even from Brendan Rodgers' first spell. It seemed like no one could ever come in and have a really good run at it. So what do you make of this one?
So I didn't know, I was talking a wee bit earlier on, didn't know an awful lot about him before he arrived, but there was a lot of good things being said about him almost immediately by various people. And when I read his attributes and what does he bring, so recruitment is going to be one of his primary functions, but football operations, which covers quite a wide spectrum of responsibility. Analytics is one of his specialisms, and innovation as well, which again is where do you start on innovation? But one of the things he's really well known for, one of his key areas he's well known for, is developing talent through the academy, and that's one of the things he did extremely well at Exeter, and helped them be successful. Some really nice things been said about him, and I know you would expect it from the likes of Nicholson, who's brought him in. Nicholson's not going to bring him in and then not say nice things, but I think probably the comments from Brendan Rodgers mean as much, if not more, because you want him to be excited by that. And often you've seen, in some big clubs, not in recent times where these types of people come in, it's not always necessarily with the manager's consent. The manager might think, oh, wait a minute, what's going to go on here, and what's this person's role versus my role? But Brendan Rodgers, he said, hugely talented man who I know will make a real positive difference and give us a new edge. He knows modern football inside out, and I've known Paul for some time, been well aware of his work. I know he'll be a huge asset to Celtic, and his knowledge, talent and tremendous work ethic will be crucial to us as we drive forward across a number of areas. So, and he said much more than that. That was just some of the stuff that he said. So Rodgers is a huge fan. That's clear. And the fact that he's got a track record of retaining talent through the academy, I mean, that's a bit that we're all frustrated by. At the end of the season, awards where Daniel Kelly was called out as being the next big thing, up on the stage, getting the Academy Player of the Year, and 10 minutes later he's away. We watched Ben Doak playing for Scotland the other night. Fantastic talent, and he didn't hang about either. And it must be a real frustration, for everybody at Celtic, from the scouts to the board, to obviously to us as fans, to think how we're going to manage to retain talent. So I'm really hopeful he's going to come in and help us with that aspect. The analytics part is obviously key, and I'm sure Rodgers will really enjoy what he brings in the analytics space. And Rodgers has been vocal in the past about how we've been lacking a little bit in some of the sports science elements. So I'm guessing he's going to come in and help us with that. And of course, there's the bit that we will be keen for him to help us with, recruitment out with the academy, and how can I attract top talent to the club. So quite excited when I read what people had to say about him, and read and understood a bit more about his background. And it does appear that he's been doing a lot of advisory work, not just with Celtic, but with a variety of clubs, and his reputation's really, really good. So I'm really excited, and I suppose you could argue, well, there's been that gap there for a period of time now, and what we heard before was not good enough. Ultimately, it wasn't good enough, and that was allowed to be the case for a long time. So we've made a positive move by the exit in the first place. We've then taken our time to get the right person in, and it looks like we've brought in somebody who's got a lot of key credentials that is going to bring exactly what we need. It's going to plug a lot of gaps and fix a lot of inherent issues that have been there for a long time.
Yeah, it's vital we have someone in that position on a full-time basis now, because I think to go into a window that was as big as the summer window was, I mean, it looks like we've come out of it pretty well, but to get into that window without somebody in that position, or will it be head of football operations or recruitment, was unthinkable at the time, really. Darren, in that podcast I listened to, it was really interesting to hear him talk about the autonomy and the freedom that he had at Exeter. And he actually talked about, it was the Business of Sport podcast, and he talked about how he ran Exeter as a cash flow business, and it was all about making enough money to pay the wages at the end of the month. And he said that the first year they didn't sell someone, it took them 3 years to rebuild their financial situation, because they'd got in the habit of selling a player every year or every window. And that sort of conveyor belt aspect of a player trading model is something that lends itself well to Celtic, because that's how we work. Okay, we're in a totally different stratosphere to a club like Exeter, but he's got experience in terms of having to move players on but also replace them. I think the numbers in terms of he spent something like 200 grand at Exeter, and sold over £15 million worth of players for a small club like that. So I think his skill set can lend itself well to Celtic, but as ever, there's going to be a lot of tension and pressure with the recruitment job at Celtic, isn't there?
Well, it sounds like he's not going to be doing much different to what we've been doing as a club, as a business for the last 4 or 5 years. If you're talking about who's just come into the club, Arnie Engels, young 21-year-old with bags with loads of potential, we look at him already, even though he's just in the door, we look at him already as a sellable asset for 20 plus million if he can maintain performance, obviously. And then you've got the likes of Jota going to Saudi for 25 million, Mattarelli, who's just gone to Brighton for 30 million, Kieran Tierney. So it goes back a few years, and what you just said to me there about him doing that at Exeter, bringing in players for low amounts and then selling them on for millions, is what Celtic do. But as you did say as well, on a much larger scale, we look to develop players into Premier League or other Champions League clubs, or in some cases Saudi clubs as well. So I don't think, it doesn't sound like he's going to be doing too much different. Like you say, if he can identify those players either from the academy or young players from teams like an Augsburg, or same way we got Mattarelli, MK Dons, teams like that. He's been at Exeter, he knows those leagues. Not to say we start signing bag loads of players from low English leagues. We don't want that. We want good investment. But if you can invest heavily in someone like £11 million for Arnie Engels, and I read a BBC article that he was involved in some of the summer recruitment as well. I don't know if it's true, but so I think you did mention there the connection with Augsburg, so he is likely a huge influence in Arne Engels coming to Celtic. So he's clearly already setting his priorities. I'm sure the likes of Michael Nicholson and Peter Lawwell and Dermot Desmond are telling him this is the model we have. We buy players young, develop them to English Premier League or Champions League level, and sell them on for a profit. You've got a proven track record of that. This is why we want you. So it seems like a good fit, but I'm sure time will tell in the future how it's going to work.
Aye, absolutely. We'll see. Martin, I just wanted to briefly get your thoughts, I suppose, on that line about the club's objective to develop Champions League players through the academy. You briefly touched on the likes of Ben Doak and Daniel Kelly there. I mean, this is, for this to be one of the big objectives for the club is so difficult. They're putting a lot of money into redeveloping Barrowfield as well. And in terms of trying to get players through the academy that can make that step up to first team, it seems like in recent years, if anybody is on the cusp of genuinely being good enough to be a Champions League player, they're almost gone before they get to the first team. And then you have maybe the likes of Kelly and Vata who would have to bide their time to get any sort of first team minutes and to find a place in the team. That's a really difficult one for the club, isn't it? For that to be their main objective, but the wider environment doesn't look like it lends itself to that. So how can the club get to a place where they retain the top talent coming through the academy and actually make them first team players?
It's a really tricky one, and you know the English have been coming up north to steal the top talent, partly post Brexit because of the restrictions that are now in place to go and get these players from elsewhere. So the Scottish market's become a far more appealing market, and the scouts have been trying to get the lads at a younger age, and of course there's far more players going down south. So you've got that challenge to start with, and of course Celtic will do their best to keep the players to get them up to professional contract age and give them that chance. I think one of the barriers that exists for Celtic is getting these lads to be playing at a decent level in advance of giving them the chance to play in the first team. And I think one of the ways that we need to try and achieve that to a greater extent going forward is increase loan deals for players to get the opportunity to play in a higher league than the opportunities. Because one of the challenges we've got is the B team play at a reasonable level, but to go from B team into the first team, it's quite a big jump. And some of the young lads will be exceptional talent, and they will be able to go from that, almost go straight into the young team. We've seen it happen across Europe where some of these young players have been put in as young as 16, 17, 18, and they are good enough and they manage to handle the pressure because there's a number of things that need to fall into place. One is there needs to be an opportunity and a position up for grabs, and then for you to be considered good enough technically, you then need to have all the mental strength that comes with that as well, and be able to play in front of 60,000 fans and all that stuff. I remember an ex-player telling me that once, that was one of the hardest things, and a lot of players really struggled with that aspect. So there's all these different components, but I think there's two challenges. One is the financial appeal of the young lads getting offered bigger money down south, but the bigger bit for the young boys is they just want to play football. And for a lot of these young lads, they may have an affiliation with Celtic and they've maybe come through the youth academy, and there's a real bond with the club. So I think that the first thing is enabling them to get some decent game time, and then the secondary thing is the financial aspect. But we've seen not a lot, but as many players hang about as players exit and go down south, if they're getting reasonable game time. There's quite a few of the young lads. Forrest and McGregor are the obvious ones, the ones that hung about when they could have gone down south for far more money, undoubtedly. So I think it is more about game time than it is about money, albeit that the gap's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, isn't it, on your base salary? Of any player at any age. I mean, Darren's talking earlier about some of the lads that are not academy players, and they're certainly not youngsters that decided to move on. And again, it was partly to do with, I suppose, playing in a bigger league at a higher level, but also to do with the financial appeal. And you even see some of the English Premier League players moving to Saudi, for example, because they're getting paid an incredible sum of money. But I think it is about the game time and giving players a chance. And as supporters, we love nothing more than seeing a young lad come on and do well. It gets everybody out their seat, doesn't it? And they get a better reaction from the fans than somebody that you bring in that's not come through the academy. So I'm hopeful that that's a huge part of the remit, the new guy coming in, that he's going to help us. And as you said, there's a lot of money being invested at Celtic at youth level, and the most recent thing being the Barrowfield stadium, which is looking really, really good, and I believe it's going to be ready for use this side of the year as well. So a lot of excitement about opportunity that will bring for the youngsters as well.
Yeah, that is a big issue for the club moving forward. I just want to bring in a question from Jamie McGowan. What's the panel's thoughts on the possibility of KT returning to Celtic? Kieran Tierney was obviously at the Celtic FC Foundation dinner in London, pictured with Brendan Rodgers, sat next to him. I think the foundation raised something like 400 grand. That must have been a tenner for every time somebody asked Kieran if he was coming back to Celtic. Darren, what's your thoughts on this? Can you see it happening?
Still up in there if it's going to happen or not. But look, Kieran Tierney is a brilliant, talented player who bleeds green and white. The one Achilles heel for him is his injuries. I know he's had surgery on his hip, which I don't know if that was just as he was leaving Celtic or as he just went to Arsenal. But I just always, ever since that, I've just always noticed that it just doesn't look the same after that. It just, even the way he runs, he just kind of has that facial expression as if he just got like a niggle. And then I think his last injury for Arsenal was his hamstring. It's a bit of a shame, to be honest, because he is a brilliant player, and he deserved his move to Arsenal. And I felt it was a bit unjust when he got put out of the team by Arteta for, I think it was Zinchenko at the time, who put him out, or Tomiyasu, I can't remember which one put him out of the team.
Zinchenko at the time.
Zinchenko. But I would love to see him back at Celtic. I know his contract's up at Arsenal at the end of the season, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
If we could get him on a free, I think that would be fantastic, because I think if he was on a multi-year deal at a team like Arsenal, we could forget about even affording him. Obviously, his wages since he left the club to what he's on now is going to be a massive difference. He's probably on, I don't know exactly what he's on, but it's probably more than six figures, more than 100,000 anyway.
Yeah.
So Celtic definitely can't afford that. So he's going to have to take a massive wage decrease if he's going to come back to Celtic, which I'm sure he would if that in his heart of hearts is what he wanted. But also I would think that other Premier League teams who are willing to look past his injury record and say, we need the left back. We've seen Kieran Tierney plays the type of player that we want. If they want to sign him, they come in to match his wage at Arsenal, or just slightly less than what he's on at Arsenal, then I'm pretty sure he's going to have a bit of a headache. It's kind of like he's got to make that decision all over again of when he left Celtic in the first place. Do I stick with my heart, or do I do what's best for my career and my future and his future family that he's, I don't know, he doesn't have a family yet, does he? But he's probably thinking that. But he's going to have that conundrum all over again if he wants to play for his club that he loves or do what's best for his career. But I would love to see him back. Obviously, we've got the left back situation just now is a bit tricky with Celtic, because Taylor's still not signed this contract, and there's always a place right now for Greg Taylor at Celtic. I think he does a good job for Celtic. Probably not, what's the word I'm looking for? He's probably not that. I'm trying to find the word. He's not that star name you look at when you see, because he's came from a club like Kilmarnock. But with Greg Taylor, he always does a job for you. Alex Valle, who's just on loan and is going to go back to Barcelona at the end of the season, whether we decide to follow through with that, that could be an interesting one, because whether they're going to decide if Valle gets enough minutes and impresses in those minutes, do we look at the option to buy, which we've done a few times, Carter Vickers, other loan players that we've signed.
Bernardo, yeah. Exactly.
So Celtic do have a history of loaning players, evaluating them, and if they impress, they offer them a contract. But if you throw Kieran Tierney into the mix, do you have to choose between Kieran Tierney or Alex Valle? I'm pretty sure I know who Brendan Rodgers will pick. He'll go with Kieran Tierney. So a bit up in smoke just now. I'm pretty sure 99% of the fans will say, I'll take him back in a heartbeat. The only thing is his injuries. I think he's a talented player, but I think his injuries are setting him back.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Just want to flag up, Quinny's saying in the comments that the contract's till 2026, so maybe about 18 months to run on it. Martin, briefly, just to round us off, how do you see it?
I think the chat, I'm no expert on it, but I think the chat was maybe a pre-contract agreement, and that would make sense with the information that we're getting there about 26 versus 25. I think this is a real interesting one. You could debate it forever. So there was some chat about Kieran Tierney was torn the last time about, and you would expect him to be torn. He's come through the academy, clearly a Celtic fan. If he was injured and he wasn't playing, he'd be sitting in amongst us in the crowd. Just Celtic through and through. And some would question that and say, if you're Celtic through and through, you would have hung about for 10 in a row. And I kind of get that train of thought. But how much say did the club have? And we're getting an absolute fortune for this lad, and would like to take it, please. And then Kieran, the club. Sometimes the club can force a sale in different ways. But even Kieran, recognising that the club are going to get the benefit of that sum of money for him, and being attracted to the potential to play at the very, very top level week in, week out. But then you look at what's happened after that. So I suppose the point I'm trying to make there is Kieran Tierney was influenced by other factors, right? But obviously by the attraction of the big money, play at the very, very top level. But also the club saying, actually, Kieran, we're all right with this because the amount of money we're going to get, you're doing us a favour. And it wasn't that far before that Kieran signed this contract. And I remember him saying the only issue with the contract was it wasn't long enough. But the club are doing that partly to help him get a big money if he was to move on, right? But here we are. Kieran Tierney never got. I mean, obviously his career started off really, really well at Arsenal, and all the pundits, Paul Merson and the likes were saying, what a player, he's one of Arsenal's best players, and we couldn't see anything other than success for him. But then it went horribly wrong, and he's went through the pain of sitting on the bench for prolonged periods of the time, and he must have been absolutely hating that for the first time in his career. And then off he goes to Spain, and I've not heard from him to understand, not necessarily that you would hear the truth, the whole truth anyway, because if he hated it, he's not sure to come out and say that. But how much did he enjoy being in a foreign country? And was that a successful project, or has he concluded that actually I would much rather play in the UK? We don't know the answer to these questions, right? But he won't want to sit on the bench and repeat that at another big Premier League club, and he probably, I would imagine, wouldn't want to go back abroad. So, and he's made quite a bit of money while he's been away. So I wouldn't be shocked if Kieran Tierney, and of course Brendan Rodgers will be a big factor as well. The fact that he played under Brendan before, they clearly had a good relationship, and he wanted to play Brendan Rodgers' style of football. So I wouldn't be shocked if Kieran's saying, look, I'd come back in a heartbeat. I'd accept a significantly reduced wage. And as Darren says, the only risk then would be that he comes back and we pay him a good wage at the higher end of the salary bracket, and then he continues to have injury problems. But I'm sure Celtic would be prepared to take that risk to get him back. What a signing that would be. And I wouldn't be surprised if it comes off.
It wouldn't be bad to sell somebody for 25 million and get them back in a free transfer with it. We'll see how that one goes. Talking of contracts, that expire in 2026. Brendan Rodgers' contract is one of them. It's maybe a discussion for another day when the club start to look at that. But that's it for this live stream. Thank you for joining us. Get involved in the fan team contest by clicking the link in the description. Good luck with it, and I'll see you tomorrow with the starting 11 prediction. Thank you.